Thank you so much, Aurora, for saying yes to exploring a topic, a theme that is very dear to me, of resilience. Um, and everybody, thank you for watching and exploring this theme with us. Aurora is a very dear friend of mine and also a coach that buddy coach, I call it, my support buddy coach. And a little bit about Aurora. I keep pronouncing it between Italian pronunciation and the American and or the European my accent. So Aurora helps individuals and groups live a life of on purpose and grow into their full potential. Did I get it right?
Yeah. Well, I want to, first of all, really thank you for inviting me to have this conversation with you. And as you said, you're my buddy coach. I always tell everybody how I work with a couple of coaches, and you're one of the two. So I'm a really big fan of your work, Lucie. So thank you.
Right back at you. Very blessed to have you. And now I want to share you with others and all the when I find something awesome, I want to share it. So let's dive in and let's explore the treasures hidden inside. And that's what's exciting for me about coaching and exploring the inner depths. So are you ready?
Let's do it.
Alrighty. So first question would be exploring what is resilience to you? How would you define resilience?
Yeah, I was really excited you actually asked me about this topic. It's a very important topic to me. So, just to set the context, the definition of resilience, it means to bounce back or to be able to deal with misfortune or with change, right? I had a very big change of heart as to what resilience mean and what it is. So, the way I was exposed to this concept at the beginning, and the way I think it's more traditionally talked about, is that resilience is something that is learned or developed. Mm-hmm. And so, that's how I first encountered this type of concept. And I have to tell you that for me was not helpful at all. It actually increased my sense that I wasn't able to cope well enough with things, or it put me in a situation where I was judging how I was coping, right? As I was looking for the definition for today, one of the definitions is that to quickly adjust, right? So how quick is quickly? Am I too slow to adjust, right? All that kind of stuff. I really changed my perspective where I started to see that actually resilience, it's our natural state, that it's actually the stuff that comes in between that makes us feel we're not resilient. And so it is not a matter of learning strategies to cope with change and misfortune. It's actually is to unlearn what comes in between. Right. So, my definition of resilience would be, yes, the ability to deal with or bounce back from misfortune and change. And I would add your natural innate ability to do that.
So all of us, in other words, already have the ability to adjust, to bounce back. And if we feel we don't, then there's something that's blocking us from realizing it or accessing it.
Yeah, I think if we feel that we don't, it means that we feel we don't. It doesn't mean that we don't have it.
We just don't have somehow access to it at the moment for some reason.
Well, I wouldn't say we don't have access. I would say we cannot feel the access, right? There's something coming in between. But I would say, yes, it's always there, right? And there might be some clearly terrible situation where somebody, is exposed to such a horrible tragedy. But I think that's a very, very, very small percentage of people.
What I liked about what you shared is it reminded me of something that I read yesterday about almost nowadays, it could be almost a toxic word or manipulation, connected to manipulation word of, let's say, you have to be more resilient. Let's say said by a boss to an employee when an employee is complaining about something or voicing a concern. No, you have to be more resilient, right? So the resilience is more of a toxic and a judgmental tool used. And I believe we need to, that's why I kind of want to have our conversations to realize what is resilience to us and how do we grow with resilience and grow healthily without the toxicity in it. So I'm hearing that maybe there was some, I don't know if you would describe it as toxic, but there was like almost beating ourselves up for not being resilient enough or good enough or whatever enough. And I think that's prevalent in our society of like not being good enough, whatever enough, like the concept of.
Yeah. So I really like that you pointed to how this is sometimes used as a manipulation tool. I think sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, right? But I can really relate to that because I grew up in a culture where, and I don't know how much this was like Italian culture, my family culture, culture in general, I don't know, right? But I grew up in this milieu where let me tell you what's wrong with you. Right? There was a constant pressure of fixing yourself and also what you feel might be wrong. You're wrong to feel that, right? And so when I got exposed to therapy and coaching at the beginning, I got exposed to very traditional ways of doing that, where again, there was the fixing, and probably my head also got translated as much more than maybe it was even intended, right? But still in this thing, right? Still in this, well, if you're not resilient, then you have to learn to be resilient, right? And good people are resilient. And, that's one skill you should aim to have, right? When I started to see that actually, when I look back, I can see that a lot of my behaviors, even when they were, let's say, bad, were that resilience that was inside of me that was trying as best it could to actually cope with things. And so I didn't have to judge myself for those, but I actually had to develop a noticing that was very deep over, I'm feeling off. And instead of saying, I shouldn't feel off, or I should do this, or, it would be, I'm curious why I'm feeling off. Right. And so in a work situation, let's say, you can just get curious at the beginning when it's a little bit off. And sometimes what might come up for you, but it has to come from you. It cannot come from judgment somebody else tells you. It can be like, oh, wow, I'm really taking things personally. That's interesting, whatever. And sometimes it will come to you, I don't like the way my boss is talking to me. This does not feel right. And so the more you stay with your knowing, but not from a judgmental place, but really a curiosity, the more you tap into that inner resilience.
So what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing it correctly, then your definition of resilience would be something that's coming from within and from a place of curiosity of what's happening. What is this emotion that I'm having, or the judgment, or the pain, possibly, or the discomfort, and curiosity what's happening, or what is the curiosity about?
The curiosity is what I would suggest, right? I think that sense comes out as our own innate sense of well-being. We have a system that stands for self-regulation. So, if you cut yourself, right? Unless it's something you need to go to the hospital or something, but like if you cut yourself, your skin heals by itself, right? If you eat food that is bad for you, you get food poisoning, your body's going to expel it however it can, right? It might be painful, but essentially it's your body taking care of it. It's the same thing when bad things happen. And I really started to see it when I read this book called The Road Less Traveled by Scott Peck. It's a book written at the end of the 70s, I think, from this psychotherapist. And it was really about, adult children of pretty abusive parents. And he said, he had this part where he said, isn't it amazing that in therapy, we always talk about, the quote unquote damage people get from these parents. But actually, if you really look at it, majority of people either on their own figure out how to be better than their parents or show up for therapy and figure out even more than their parents that they need help, right? So he was like, actually, I see this innate well-being all the time. And we're constantly giving this story that this happened to you, therefore there's something wrong with you, instead of giving the story of like, well, look, this happened to you, and yet there's a part of you that knows instinctively that was not right, knows instinctively there's a better place, right? You might not have figured out how to deal with that, or you might, maybe as a child, you figured out, okay, then I'm not going to talk to people, I'm afraid of people, because that's what worked in your home.
Yeah.
But that was a healthy way of coping at the time. And you don't have to look at that damage. You can say, wow, I was so smart. I figured out how to deal with this situation where I was a little kid and powerless. What happens if I embrace that part of myself and let that innate well-being do its job now? Right? So when I got to that, when I saw that, then my life really changed,
Is there a particular situation or story that you would be open to sharing with us?
Yeah. So I'm gonna keep it very general, okay? But I think if we want to go back to the workplace, I definitely had situations where I was in a workplace where the dynamics did not work for me. And because I didn't understand this about myself, I only could see this after when I learned this, okay? This was what I did. And I see it in my clients all the time. Like, it's a very common misunderstanding. You have a little bit of that, this doesn't feel really good, or I don't know, like, it's not even a red flag. It's a little something.
Like the feeling in the gut that something is off?
Yeah, it's very slight, it's like, and you immediately go in the like, I shouldn't think that, I'm too like this, you immediately override it, right?
Yeah.
Then you start having some situation where you start feeling insecure, right? Maybe you don't like the way people are talking to you. Maybe somebody says something, you interpret it another way, whatever. Yeah. You don't even realize this is happening. As your insecurity, your sense of security goes down, you become more insecure. Whatever defense habitual mechanism comes up. So I have two, okay? If it's a little bit how can I help you? I'm so sorry. Like, people pleasing comes out. If it's really, really bad, then I can become very aggressive as well, right? So I didn't know this, I didn't understand this mechanism. So what would happen to me is that the first thing I would start is like, okay, maybe I'll try this, the people pleasing. Yeah. Then I would start feeling bad that I'm doing the people pleasing, right? And be like, oh, what's wrong with me? I'm not assertive enough, all these kind of things. Try to overcompensate. Of course, in all this dynamic, the other person is thinking, what's up with Aurora? Right? Like, the whole thing now, it's like communication is out the window. And then if I don't realize that this is not working for me, I can just sit with, there's something here that's not working, right? Then it will escalate. Then I will start feeling now I have to overcompensate the people pleasing with the let me be aggressive. And then, of course, that never goes well. And this whole thing makes me feel so bad about myself. It increases the insecurity, right? A lot of the time, this is what happens in situations. And we don't see that once I understood this, I didn't worry about, am I being people pleasing or this and that? Like, I just started to notice, oh, this feels off. Let me be curious. Right? Because I know that there's nothing wrong with me. So if something feels off,
yes,
okay, so it's a good thing for me to know. And if I stay with it, my inner wisdom will start pointing me either to it's triggering me, it's something within me, that I gently have to work with, or yeah, it's legit, I'm picking on something that's not healthy for me. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, could I pause for a moment just to
yeah.
So we're hearing that there was a challenge in workplace, and there was some. So when there's resilience, there's usually a challenge or a pressure that
yes, or change or big changes,
or change
something throws you.
So there was some unpleasant. So there were some people in the workplace, sounds like, that either criticized or were not kind to you. How would you describe that?
I would say some dynamics that were not optimal for me. Let's keep it very,
very general. So if anybody can, if probably just to keep it, let's say for some example, I've had a client recently said she felt bullied in her job.
Okay.
That her boss was basically bullying her, or that's what was happening, and she was at a point of actually quitting. So that environment was not optimal. I would say that's part of. So if anyone who is watching, how would kind of work? Have you had a work situation where you would describe it as not optimal, where something felt off? And and it sounds like in the past, when something felt off, there was a sort of conflict or discomfort before, without going into the details. Then in the past, and that's a lot of people have the tendency, especially if they were told in their culture or childhood, if you do this, this is wrong, these feelings are wrong, you need to fix yourself. So I have to fix myself. And if I am a lot of men, probably a lot of you cannot cry, right? You have to suck it up, you need to be strong. So if people feel that they are not strong enough, then there's the judgment and beating ourselves up, versus looking at, what, there's nothing wrong with me, actually. There's we all evolve. So kind of switching the filter or the lens from, instead of judging perspective, sounds like there's
so it's interesting to me that you mentioned bullying, right? Because this is another one of those things we pick up. If I'm bullied at work, it's okay for me to quit. And this is why I'm saying this can happen whether the other person is legit toxic, like it's a legit toxic environment. I don't even think people are toxic, behaviors, right? A toxic environment. It can also happen it's a great environment for somebody else. Right? One time in one of my panel discussion events, I had somebody that had a startup, and she didn't like that at work you did not talk about feelings and what was happening in your life. So every morning she and her staff would meet and say how they felt and have a very emotion-based conversation about their lives. Okay, to me personally, that would be a nightmare. Right? I could not. I was like, I do not want to talk about that at work, right? But for somebody else, for her team, it was like, yes, I can finally be myself at work, right?
Yeah.
So if I joined their team and I didn't know this was happening, right? And I felt off, I don't have to go and judge that that's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
I can sit with that. I just can see what happens for me, what comes up. And it could come up that I could think, wow, maybe this is an invitation for me to be more in my emotion, whatever. Maybe we could figure out that it's an invitation for the workplace to be able to dance with people who are more open and less open and accept everybody. And maybe we just feel like, no, thank you. Right? But you see that it's like, the more you're in that space of I am okay, and I have a process within myself that guides me, I don't have to get to, I might be in a really bad situation or I might not be, but, I now, so to me, the more you stay in that, the more your resiliency comes up, because when it's a little problem, okay, and it's a big problem, you really feel it and you know not to get entangled in it, right? Or you can find in yourself like, okay, it's really hard, but I have that strength inside.
So there are two different directions I see we could take it from here.
And I'm talking about very subtle things, right? So it's important, anybody who's listening to this, right, that I'm describing how it feels to me. You have to sort of notice within yourself, because everybody's a little bit different, right? So to
Absolutely,
you, it will feel a little bit different. But if you get to know yourself, you have that compass too.
Totally. So I'm trying to see, so far from what you've shared, and yes, and that's why I'm so excited to have actually multiple interviews to see what are the different definitions and experiences, and what is resiliency. And it seems from what you've shared, what I'm gathering so far. So resiliency for you is you get access to it, to resiliency, when you kind of switch or stop judging and beating yourself up, or when we stop judging and beating ourselves up, and we kind of are almost compassionate to ourselves and stop saying, well, there's something wrong with me, instead of being curious, what do I need? How do I feel right now? What is that's off? What is it that is off here?
Yeah.
And it sounds like that the judgment is because you mentioned the toxicity could be in the environment, but maybe it's just not a match. So it sounds like it's not even judgment of, oh, you did it, you're wrong. So it's not I am wrong or you are wrong. Sometimes it's just not a match. And just be curious.
Yeah, just to be curious. Because again, sometimes it's appropriate to say, this person is at fault and I need to take certain specific steps, right? I mean, you could be in a situation and your wisdom might say, you need to take some drastic steps and you need to, fight against harm or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that it can be that. It can be some things don't work. It can be, it's just not for me, right? Like you don't have, so I think a lot of our culture really trains us towards, if I cannot blame somebody and it's not a really bad situation, I cannot do what I want, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that doesn't help anybody.
So unless it's too bad, then I shouldn't complain, kind of.
Right. So unless it's toxic, I'm being bullied, this and that, I don't have the right to have, and I think that doesn't help anybody.
So would resilience be part of, I do have the right to feel a certain way that I want to feel, or be in an environment that I want to be in? How does resilience play a role in all this?
So I think the more you can rest in that feeling, I have my own process and I can just be curious and open to it. The more you open up that access, and the resilience is right there.
So it reminds me of, you haven't said that word, but what came up for me is the word trust. Because you even mentioned, well, body knows, there's this knowing of the body how to heal itself when we all take cut or bump, unless it's like a deep cut, right? But all the like a gentle cut, I guess, not too deep, that the body will heal itself. So it's like with the emotional almost resilience, or resilience in the environment or social environment, sounds like that, from based on the example that you've used, that we have our own kind of inner compass to guide us to the well-being, as long as we are curious and trusting in our own ability to find a way. Would you?
I love that you actually said trust, because I was talking to a client about this yesterday, and this was a major lesson to me. And you're right, it is also a thing of trust. So without going into details, I come from a very dysfunctional, abusive family. So to say that I had major trust issues, it's like an understatement. Okay. And again, coming from that traditional thing, it was you have attachment disorders, there's something wrong with you, you have to learn how to trust other people. Yeah. That, of course, for me, increased the pressure because then I didn't want to trust. But then I felt there's something wrong with me if I don't trust. So maybe I should trust. Then I would get very confused on who to trust with a 50-50 chance that half of the time, maybe I really shouldn't have trusted them, right? You see the problem there, right? At some point, I saw the same thing I saw with resiliency. I saw, well, we're similar. Actually, if I trust myself, then trusting other people is a consequence. I don't have to trust other people. I just trust that if there's something to pick up, I'll pick it up. If there's something to see, I'll see. If I don't see, I'll know how to handle it. So when I relax again I actually function well. Like this conditioning or this fear on top, it didn't touch that compass. Yeah. And if I don't feel like I trust somebody, I don't have to judge it. I can just be curious. And I can tell you that if I get curious and I feel what's going on with me without trying to judge it, yes, I can see whether it's me being triggered, right? In which case I will handle that. Yeah. Or it is, oh, wow, yeah, there's something here that, I don't know what it is, but I shouldn't trust this person, right? Yeah. So the more we can start being friends with ourselves, right? Accepting of ourselves, in tune with ourselves, the deepest self, the self that has not been touched, which we all have 100% of the time, trust rises up, resilience, trust, rises up, wisdom rises up, the compass, you can see where it's pointing.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your trust to share with me here and others. And it's something very precious, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure everybody who's hearing it or watching this can appreciate it also, because that's an experience that is very tough to have in childhood. And I'm sure there's many. The more people I talk to, a lot of people have experienced difficult childhoods and difficult experiences and bullying and not trusting themselves. And so I feel your share could really help those who may be still judging themselves or not trusting themselves right now, or who have lost maybe a lot of things because of current situation and what's happening in the world, that might be in the state of not trusting themselves, even regardless of their childhood. Sometimes we collect not trusting ourselves on the way as we live through other experiences. And so if I'm hearing it correctly, is the journey, the access, the door to access the resilience is through the trust, curiosity. What would be the opposite of judgment? Would that be the curiosity?
It's a radical self-acceptance.
Self-acceptance.
Yeah, but really on a radical level where, you just see that you have your own process, and it's really paradoxical. It's extremely countercultural. It's extremely countercultural because, even when I got first exposed to this, it makes sense to me when I feel this way.
Yes,
but it doesn't make sense
in the middle and survival mode when you're stressed out. Oh my God.
Right. So that's why it's important to say radical self-acceptance, that you really, the more and more you see, no, it's like 100% of the time, if I lean into it, like I come out on the other side. with the door open. I'm gonna fix my camera here 1 second.
No worries.
Right. So so to give you a negative example, right? Like now if I don't know, if I feel sad, and maybe it's very sad, maybe I'll cry for a weekend. Before I would be like, I need to get over this. I need to do this. Sometimes it makes sense to get over it. Sometimes I would be like, I feel sad. I need to, just go to the movies and relax. So there's that too, right?
Yeah.
But I also sort of can go with the process. If sometimes it's like, no, there is this grief, and in the past it would really scare me. It would be like, oh, it will take me over. What if I get depressed? So, I would have all these things, or I shouldn't, or I'm not resilient enough, all these things. Instead now, because I relax in it, then I can see what makes sense. And sometimes it makes sense to, wow, I'm really getting caught up in these thoughts. I need to go for a walk. I need to call my friend Lucie, and talk with her or whatever. And sometimes it makes sense. I need to really cry. Yeah. It's amazing how this has changed my life. It's just, it's amazing.
It reminds me of the power of just accepting, just like you said, radical acceptance. There's another term that we might hear often, which is toxic positivity, which is putting on top of the negative emotion, pretending I am happy and everything is fine, which is not healthy.
Yeah, the other one like that I practiced for a long time too is like, if you're afraid, it means you have to go, for it.
Yes.
Right. And again, it's like, no, notice the fear, relax in the fear, like, be curious about your fear. Sometimes it makes sense to then push through it. And sometimes it's like, yeah, I'm afraid I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
That might not be the best option. Makes sense. Yeah. So it looks like there's still the curiosity of whatever feelings come, kind of invite them as guests and ask like, okay, so, there's fear, there's anger. Okay. Kind of, what do you want to tell me? What is the message here? What's happening?
Yeah. I like that you say as guests. I think there's a famous, is it a Rumi poem that talks about that? Maybe. Okay.
I can find it and post it under the video.
Yeah, that's right. But I think that's also important, that you also don't give it too much meaning. Right? It's your process. It's this thing that unfolds and, works through you, and you don't have to make it into a thing.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And I feel I also wanted to say to those of you that watch and they're like, well, I cannot totally connect to that. Like, what is she talking about emotions? That's why we have different perspectives here, because everybody is in different stage and everybody's coming from a different angle. So if this doesn't resonate, I invite everybody here to notice and be curious from a non-judgmental perspective, to see how can I look at this person's story, be it Aurora's or anybody in your life, in your family, whoever is going through something. How can I look at them and their feelings with curiosity instead of judgment? And then looking at yourself. Have you been judging yourself and comparing your way of processing whatever happens with how Aurora is processing? And if we use Aurora's method of opening the door through the trusting yourself, so even if your process is different, it's totally fine, and there's no need to judge yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And there's yeah. So the message, I guess, for our viewers or listeners, would you like to complete? Kind of give the
to wrap it up. I would say you don't have to learn how to be resilient. Let me just do this again. Sorry, the camera
Yeah,
is off
resilience
focus.
in action here. When we get out of
Right.
focus in life or on camera, we take
That's
a
right.
moment and go back.
That's right. You don't have to learn to be resilient. You're already naturally resilient. And your system wants to take you to a state of well-being, wants to stabilize. So my invitation is to be open and curious when things come up for you without giving a ton of meaning, without trying to judge it and fix it on that, but just be curious. And if you're curious and notice, you open up. I like that you said that door. You open up that door and you start seeing things for yourself. You start seeing things.
Beautiful.
It's a beautiful process.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I feel even in your body, it shifted, that it was more like peace and calmness. Is that when you've talked about there's something new, almost like the opening of the door through the trust to more, would the resilience bring more calmness and peace? Sounds like more self-acceptance is on the other side of the door too.
Well, sometimes it has to bring out, you're fighting
So whatever
drive, right? So it depends, right? It depends. It
Okay.
depends.
So
See?
just to whatever you see, then that's what you take.
I think we're very well suited to then know, when we need to walk away, be calm, have a talk, work it out, work on ourselves, or really be like, okay, no, this needs, whatever big action it needs. It's just, we'll know.
I'm laughing because I hear the sound in your background. So it's perfect. We are talking about perseverance, in a way, resilience. Even when there is like the noise in the background, could be our mental noise or the judgments. We have a literal noise, yet we are resilient, and we did it. We got through. Thank you so much. I know we haven't addressed much about what you do, even though the way that you are here with me can tell people how you are with people and what is your process, and anything that if people want to know more about you, connect with you, ask you any more questions, would you be open about questions about resilience?
Yeah, you can find my website at repurposeyourpurpose.com, and I'm at Aurora, like my first name, at repurposeyourpurpose.com, and I'm happy always to talk to people and hear from people. So I think, as you said, Lucie, this is a pretty good taste of my philosophy and how I work with people. And most of my work is really to free people up, so then they can access all that there is inside of themselves to deal with whatever there is to deal in life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aurora. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Please, if anybody has questions, feel free to ask them under the video, wherever you see it. We'll do our best to reply. And I look forward to exploring more. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Aurora.